Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here with I got a random act of kindness. This was arranged through back channels on Twitter. Claude, RememberPorkins, and I had a conversation either on one of his videos or on one of mine about Herb Trimpe and about GI Joe. And I mentioned I had never read Herb Trimpe's GI Joe, and he offered to send me a bunch of Herb Trimpe GI Joe comics. And I couldn't say no to that. And they came very quickly. So I have not looked at them yet. He's got them all packed up really well. And I should say Clyde's someone I really like. Just enjoy his personality here on YouTube. He collects toys, he collects comics, he does a lot of Star Wars and Star Trek stuff. More Star Wars, I think, but I know he's a Star Trek fan too. Definitely feel like he would be just a great guy to sit down and have a beer with and chat. So who knows, maybe someday, maybe I'll go to a convention in Colorado someday. I seem to be gathering some Colorado friends lately. But anyway, oh wow, he's got bubble wrap packed around these too. So he knows how to pack up comics nice and safely. I'm not quite sure. I'll be learning about when Herb Trimpe did G.I. Joe. I assume starting in the 80s, or was that the 90s? And did he do some, when G.I. Joe moved away, G.I. Joe was at Marvel at first, and when G.I. Joe moved away from Marvel to other publishers, did he work on G.I. Joe there? Did he work with Larry Hama, who I know was kind of the legendary G.I. Joe writer? Let's see here. These look like Marvel comics. Okay, so, and from the price, I would guess this is the 80s. Maybe even the early 80s, or mid to early 80s. So, cool. I'm not sure this first cover might not be by Trimpe. G.I. Joe Special Missions. I'm just going to open it up right now. A real American hero. As opposed to those kind of artificial American heroes you get, like kind of cheese whizzy heroes. Yep, Herb Trimpe art. Larry Hama script. Let's see what we got here. I think Trimpe is, or Trimpe. In my head, he's always Trimpe because as a kid, I read comics drawn by what I thought was Herb Trimpe. It's kind of a little bit more of a minimal style than he might have had in the 60s and 70s. Interesting. I'm going to try opening number 3. So G.I. Joe Special Missions. I wonder if that was a second G.I. Joe comic, or that's what they called the regular G.I. Joe comic. So anyway, we got number 4. That almost looks like a John Buscema cover to me. Number 5. Number 6. So I'm going to be second guessing who did all of these covers. They don't look like Trimpe covers, which is not surprising. They had certain people back in the 80s who did most of the covers. That artist, that almost looks like Mike Zeck to me. Is that how you pronounce his name? Mike Zeek, maybe. Mike Zeck. Oh wait, and here's number 1. So I got them out of order. So I like that number 1 cover. That's quite cool. That looks like Mike Zeck to me also. And then back to number 9. These look like a lot of fun. Number 10. that Zek also? Zek? Oh, this one's Herb Trimpe. I can see a signature. That's actually a very cool cover. Oh, is there a signature on this one? This one says Wagner and McLeod. Wagner? I don't know who Wagner would be. Wagner and McLeod. And Wagner and McLeod. Who is this Wagner? Guess they liked him doing covers. R. Wagner. That's kind of a cool cover. I wonder if Trimpe did this. No, it looks like Wagner again. Wagner and McLeod. Wagner and McLeod. Oh, this is interesting. Andy Kubert. This must be early Andy Kubert work. It looks a lot like Joe Kubert. And that is the final issue. So he sent me 19. That's amazing. 19 Herb Trimpe issues. I'm going to look at issue number 19. I will get around to reading these and perhaps come back to you on my thoughts on G.I. Joe. I know a lot of people who kind of grew up with G.I. Joe and loved it. But for whatever reason, let's see what, I'm guessing these came out like in 1984 or something. I'm going to take my glasses off to look. 1989, I'm wrong. By 1989, I would have been 28. I would have thought I was way too grown up for G.I. Joe. But now I'm not so grown up. So that's cool. It seems like Trimpe was trying to tone down his style here a bit, if I'm not mistaken. And that fits with my general impression that as the 80s progressed, in general, people at Marvel were encouraged to have more low-key styles. I've always meant to do a video about that. A lot of small panels. I think that was the Jim Shooter influence. He liked small panels. He didn't like big, flashy artwork. Of course, then things went the exact opposite way in a few years later after Jim Shooter left, and things got crazy with the people who eventually became the whole Image crew. Anyway, thanks very much for such a big chunk of comics, Clyde. I'll put a link to Clyde's Remember Porkins channel down below. And wish you all a good evening, or a good morning, or a good afternoon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.